What is going on, everybody? This is Howie by 39. Today we're going to be doing a video on why I think everybody should consider a Glock as one of their first handguns. I just want to start this off by saying I am not a Glock snob. I think that Glocks are great handguns, but my favorite handgun right now is actually the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield EZ. The slide is very smooth and the trigger is very crisp. But I do think that Glocks are the best gun that you can get for the money, and the reliability of them is better than any other firearm on the market. So with that, let's get into a little bit more about Glocks. Before we get into the video, one thing I do want to mention, always make sure you remember your 4 rules of gun safety. Rule number 1, treat every firearm like it is loaded. This one is not. There's nothing in this mag here, and there's nothing in the chamber. Rule number 2, keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to fire. Rule number 3, never point your firearm at anything you aren't willing to destroy. And rule number 4, always know what is beyond your target. With that, let's get into it. Now I'm just going to talk about a little bit of history here on the Glocks and how they came to be. Glock was originally founded by Gaston Glock. He didn't even start off making any type of weapons or firearms. He was making curtain rods and shovels. And then in the mid-70s, he saw that there was an ad for a contract for the Austrian military. It was to make their new field knife that went with their Steyr AUG. So he went into his garage and he went to work. He was already making shovels, so he probably just made a skinnier and sharper shovel and then presented that to him with a nice polymer handle. And they really liked it. They gave him a contract of about 25,000 units, and his relationship with the military went from there. Fast forward a few years, around 1982, they came back to him and they're like, hey, we're looking for a new handgun to replace our Walther P38. So then he went back to his garage and he got to work. I believe that he ended up using a Browning barrel. I don't remember the other specifications on the gun, but he ended up making the Glock 17. This here is the Gen 5. He made the Gen 1. It was named after the 17th patent that his company had. And since I have a Gen 5 here, you probably can tell how it went. The Austrian military absolutely loved it. And it was kind of a new wave for guns and like something new to the table, because it was one of the first like polymer guns that came around, and it seemed to do really well just because of the lightweightness and because it was usable by everybody. And then the Austrian military ended up introducing it to their Austrian police, and they loved it too. And nowadays, pretty much every police force, probably around the world, has some form of Glock 17 standard issue or Glock 19 as their standard issue firearm, or they will encourage you to carry one of those 2 firearms just because they are very reliable and you don't have very many malfunctions. And if something goes wrong, you can replace it really easily, and it's a very good gun even to this day. Now I'm just going to get into some pros and cons on these Glocks. I think that there's a lot more pros than cons to them. The first thing I want to talk about, I should say, is the reliability. These guns are very reliable. I've probably put 500 or 600 rounds and dry fired it at least 500 times. And the only time that I've had any malfunctions is when I limp wrist it. You do have to give them a little bit more of a grip than you do the steel frame firearms, but it's a little bit nicer because they are lighter, so it's easier to carry and a little bit easier to conceal. Another thing that I really like about these is the price point. They come in at a really good price point, even for used ones. You can find them for $300 to $450 for police trade-ins and stuff. And for new ones, you can find them anywhere from $550 to $650 depending on the model and what options you want. If you want a Moss edition, then you get the optics cuts on the slide. Some people like, or you can just buy an aftermarket slide and it'll do the same thing for you. Another thing that I really like about this gun is just how well it is made for everybody. It has the slide release on the right and the left side on it, and you can change out the mag release from the left side to the right side. And that's kind of different than most firearms, I feel like. even with this Smith & Wesson shield here, you cannot change the slide release. So it is only on the left side. I believe you can change the mag release to the opposite side if you would like, but you still can't change the slide release, which would be kind of handy if you could. At least for me, because I'm a left-handed shooter. Another thing that I really like about these Glocks too is the mags. It's a 17 round mag capacity. I feel like it's great. And there's also a lot of options for aftermarket mags, so you can get them really cheap if you want. Even like standard Glock mags are still fairly cheap, but the aftermarket ones, you can get them 10, 15 bucks at most places, which is a lot better than something like this, which is anywhere from $25 to $35, and it's only an 8 round mag. So it's a little bit more expensive for a lot less bullets. But now I do want to get into some cons. One thing that I know some people don't really like is the grip on this thing. It is bulky, and there is kind of an angle to it, so it's a little bit different. I personally like it, so it's not a big issue to me. One thing that I don't really like is the trigger on this gun. I've heard that the Gen 5s are a lot lighter than the previous generations, but it's not it's not nearly as smooth as this. The trigger on this firearm here is amazing. It is the smoothest trigger I have felt so far. I haven't shot too many handguns, but that thing is a freaking beast. Another thing that I know can be a con for a lot of people is this front rail here. I don't really have any problems with it because I'm not putting a light or laser or anything on it yet, but I know that it can be a little difficult to find stuff that'll fit because sometimes you have to get stuff specifically for Glocks. This one is more just set up like a regular Picatinny rail, so you could put most options on there. But other than that, I don't think that there are many cons to the Glocks. I think that these are one of the best bang for your buck handguns, and I think that everybody should at least go to a range and try one out and see how they like it. I would suggest trying out a 17, a 19, and probably like a 48. That's the one that I believe has the 10 round mag, so it'll be kind of the same size as the 19, but it'll be just a little bit skinnier in your hand if you feel like these are too bulky. But I feel like these are great handguns and very reliable for what you can pay. And even if you go with a police trade-in gun, they don't usually get fired very often, usually during their yearly training. But if you have to replace parts again, very easy to find and very inexpensive to do so. So with that, I'm gonna put in some clips here at the end of me shooting, and I'll meet you guys at the range. Alrighty, we're just going to start with about 5 rounds in the chamber here. Always remember to have some eye protection and some ear protection. Let's get her done. Alright, now we have about 10 rounds in here. Gonna see what we got. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you would like, you can check out the merch that I have. You can go down to www.hgso.store or check out the link in the description. I hope that this video encourages you to go check out a Glock at your local gun range. You can also find them on Gun Broker if you don't want to buy it from the range. You can get fairly good prices there. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you.